Hey, I made a Scrum Master app. So this is a web app that we'll be using for some Scrum Master functionality. So that's going to be creating tickets, documentation, some design stuff, holding our updates, and maintaining our backlog. Okay, so first we have our requirements. So Flask, that's a web framework for Python. Flask RESTful is just an extra library that will help us with our Flask stuff. Mock is for testing, but I didn't end up using it. Pillow, I don't remember what I installed this. Plant UML, so this is for generating design documents. We're going to see that in a second. I'm not going to try to pronounce this, but this is to connect to our PSQL, so Postgres for those who don't know. Redis is a cache that I didn't end up setting up. I actually couldn't set it up on my Mac for some reason, but I created a saver function just to get around that. If you want, you could actually delete my saver function, just add Redis over it. It's a pretty easy fix, just because they both treat each other like dictionaries. Requests is for sending out. That's how we're going to talk to our backend. And streamlit will work for our front end. Okay, so first off, I took this from a tutorial for how to make streamlit multi-page app. So basically it's just a drop-down box, and with each drop-down it'll show the results of a different page. That's it. Okay, so here we actually generate the multi-app that we just saw. So we're going to bring in all of our pages and we're going to feed it into that drop-down menu. And then we're running it. Cool. So I chose to show you guys this backlog page just because it shows most of the functionality, if not all, that I actually implemented. Everything else is just kind of a copy paste situation from this page. So we're grabbing streamlit. We're calling in a couple functions. So the tickets will be the tickets that we've already saved. So we're going to be fetching all of those from our database, and we're going to split them into 3 groups, as well as updates. So updates for if you're not a developer, which I don't know if this would be too useful for you. It might be, but updates are usually for, so in the mornings we have something called Scrum meetings. So we plan out sprints, which is 2 weeks, usually 2 weeks, of what we're going to do in that week. And during these Scrum meetings, we have one 15 to 30-minute meeting in the morning to talk about what we did and what we will do. It just keeps us on schedule. And then the date. The date we're going to use to fetch the correct updates, because we don't want yesterday's updates, we want today's updates. Cool. So this is just for printing out each value to screen, just because I didn't like how the JSON format was. So there is an st.format. So for Streamlit, there's a JSON function that will print out your JSON in a little folder section. I didn't like it, so I just wrote it to page like this. So this is our main app. So we're going to have a title here called backlog. We're going to fetch our updates. We're going to see how we do that more or less in a second. From there, we're creating a sidebar. So this sidebar is writing all of our updates to a little section. So here I do use, you'll see that it's a JSON format, just because I didn't really care, just because it's just updates. You can look at them or not look at them. So from here, I also added this section where you can add your daily update if you didn't already. So you could use this, or you could use just Postman to talk to your backend directly. So as you can see, it actually takes 5 values. So full name, blocker, today's, today's work and yesterday's work. And then we're going to generate the today's date by day, month, year. This is necessary to actually query for what we want, because we're going to be only fetching today's values every time we call the get request. Okay, so from here, this is the actual backlog. So a backlog, if you don't know, is just all the things that we got to do. So what are we going to do right now? What do we have to do next? And what do we have to do like way later on? So as you can see, I've already split those up. So I'm doing this by setting priority to each one. So this is priority 1, 2, and 3, and then we just split those up. I might show those later, or you could just look at them yourselves. But that's how we're splitting that. So from here, this is where we're actually writing each ticket for using that function I showed you before. And then we have the next sprint. This just adds a separator line. You should be able to see it in a bit. So blah, 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 blah. Current backlog. Yep, not much else. Okay, so show specifics is a more interesting thing. So here we will be using a form to grab user input. This user input will be an ID, preferably. We're gonna submit that. When it's submitted, I don't need this anymore. This is for testing. Once we get that, we're gonna grab this element from our saver file. But if you wanted to change it to a Redis cache, it would be grabbing from your Redis cache. And then from there, we're going to print that image to screen, because this function that we have internally will create a PUML file and print it out. And then we're going to write out what is actually there. So that's going to just be some data of that ticket or document. It's actually a document. Okay, so this is how we're talking to our backend, which is pretty much the main thing I wanted to look at, just because that little bit of talking is really weird concept. Just sending out requests, giving back things. It's, I don't know. I had a weird time with it when I first started. So we're going to have requests. That's to talk to our backend. And then we're going to import JSON so we can fetch the data as well as filter it out with the JSON dump. We're going to grab saver so we can add our information to our little cache that we created. I'm not going to show you the cache just because if you do end up using Redis, like, there's no point to it. It's just saves all your data in a dictionary. So from there, we have, I didn't want to separate these two much in logic just because one is for when you fetch, so we're sending out our get request for our documents and we get back a bunch. So I just put them into a for loop and then read them into a saver one at a time. I could have done something else like with concat or something like that, but this is good enough for me. If you wanted some more functionality, you could change that. Yeah, but whatever. Similar idea here. No, this isn't. I was thinking of if I could put them in the same thing, but this isn't an array. Okay, so next we have our actual creation of an item. So in this case, it's a document. So we're gonna read in our data that's being sent by our form. So after we hit submit, we push this to this function, and then we're gonna put it into this JSON file or format. It's really a dictionary, but then we're gonna change it to JSON format. So JSON dumps, we're gonna put this whole object in here, and now we have a cool JSON string that we're gonna add here at the end. So here is how we send out a request, and now the response to that request is now in this variable. So we're going to update our saver. So this response is going to come back with the ID number. So we're going to need that ID number for when we're putting it into a dictionary. And then we're also going to want to return that value as well. So fetching, so it's a GET request to this URL. And then again, we're going to save it. And then we're going to send back all the data that we got. So in this JSON, we're going to have like all of this information, title, description, blah, 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 blah. So fetch connections is just something that I thought might make my life easier, but it might just be useless. So it just fetches all these repo connections. So the idea of repo connections that I wanted to do here was for each document, we're going to be creating a new function or something along those lines. And that's going to have some connection to some other microservice or API or front end or back end, something. And I just wanted it to show how everything communicates with each other. Just so if you're new, you might get confused on what repos talk to what and how things are connected and what could possibly go wrong. So this could give you a clear idea of that, or maybe it's useless, I don't know. But I thought it was a good idea. Anyway, so fetch ID, this fetches a specific value. I don't use this. I made this just because I was like, what if I did need it? But I ended up going with the cache route instead. If you wanted to, because you could always just grab one individual one if you have any need for it. I'll leave it there. So updating. So here we're going to update all the values. We're going to send it as a put. And it's the same thing as a post request. So we're going to send it and it's going to go to an update on our backend.